Welcome to the Wholehearted Eating Podcast, where non-diet nutrition, weight-inclusive care, and integrative health collide. We're your hosts, Dana Montes and Christina Hoyt, licensed integrative clinical nutritionists and body image coaches.
And we believe you deserve to have a joyful relationship with food in your body, even if you have a chronic health condition or symptoms that just won't quit. On this show, together and with our guests, we're bringing the real talk, no BS vibe with tangible tools to help you pursue health and wellness without obsession or restriction.
Remember our disclaimer, this podcast is meant for general information purposes only and should not be taken as a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
Coming in hot today with the Gut Trends episode, numero dos.
We got such great feedback from the last episode, especially because it was so sassy, especially in the title.
I know. And you know what? I feel like we keep getting more. Like I've gotten messages on Instagram with other questions. One that we're going to pop in here today about hydrogen water, which, newsflash, nobody knows what the hell that is. Even PubMed.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So a lot of these topics came from Instagram and direct messages. So let's do an overview of all of the things that we hope to get to today. Now, also, this is not going to be like a 3-hour episode. So we may have to bump these to a part 3, or some of them we may have to do a super deep dive on. So we'll see. But these are the things so far that we are planning on covering today. So we're going to talk about Everlywell and just food sensitivity testing in general, stool testing a little bit, hydrogen water, seed probiotics specifically, because we got questions about that one. There's also a $100 probiotic that's floating out there in the universe from Pendulum. So we're going to talk about them a little bit, but this is the one where we may need to do like a roll deep dive on. So pending. We're definitely going to talk about Food Marble, which is at-home breath testing. And
which
then
is wild.
We have time, we might get to this product called Ion, which used to be called Restore, but has now been rebranded.
Ooh, I didn't know it's been I know Restore. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know anything about Ion, so Dana's gonna.
Well, spoiler alert, it's exactly the same thing as Restore. So so let's get into food sensitivity testing. Christina, do you want to start with this one or do you want me to go?
Don't waste your money. Honestly. And I understand. I also just want to preface that with one, don't waste your money. It doesn't give you any information. But as a preface to this, I will say, I understand the desire if you're at home with bubbly guts and having a really hard time and not really knowing what's going on. And maybe you don't want to do a all-encompassing restrictive protocol because we've talked about how awful those can be and how restrictive they are and all of the things. I can understand why doing a food sensitivity testing would be really alluring to you and you would want to do them. Listen now, save your money, don't do them. Even functional doctors don't even look at them when you bring them back in. And this was 5 years ago when I worked with a functional doctor, and every time someone brought them in, we would both always say, this tells us nothing. All it tells us, especially if it's lit up like a Christmas tree and everything is coming back red, the only thing that tells us is that your gut is angry. That's it. That's all it tells us, which we already knew based off of your symptoms and how you've been feeling. It's very rare when someone comes back with everything lit up like Christmas tree and they're like, oh, I feel fine. Because you wouldn't have gotten the test to begin with. But those are my first initial thoughts. I think they're basically the same as yours, but don't waste your money, guys. Don't do it. There's so many other things you can do instead to find out what's going on.
This actually goes for especially these at-home food sensitivity tests, but even the ones that you can get at a functional doctor's office. Like Christina and I both have experience with these personally. I got one probably over 10 years ago when I was first trying to figure out if I had celiac or whatever was going on. But yeah, they can run you $400, $500 more dollars. And I will always go back to this point is if food is not the origin of the problem, you're not going to find the solution in eliminating foods. And that I find beyond the bogus science that is not okay, there is no science supporting these food sensitivity tests. And that fact is pretty much widely accepted by most doctors, functional medicine doctors, nutritionists, dietitians. There are still some people that use these. If I were to ever use a food sensitivity test, it would be an absolute last resort. We have tried every single other thing, and we cannot figure out what is going on. That is not something that has ever happened in my practice. So I have not used these in a very long time. One point that I want to make is that this is not food allergy testing. That is very different. This is sensitivity testing, which is not immune modulated, right? Allergies is like anaphylaxis, other stuff like that. We're not talking about that. Further, the other issue that I have with food sensitivity testing is the quote prescription that is given for when you get these results back is, oh, if you just take away all of those foods, you won't have issues anymore. That's not the case at all. First of all, most of the time when people get these food sensitivity tests back, they have like 3 different ranges. One is like a green of like, oh yeah, you didn't have any reaction to this. Second, one is like moderate, like, oh, you had somewhat of a reaction. And third is like, oh my God, stop light, don't touch these ever, which again, it's not testing for an allergy. It's not testing for celiac. It's not testing for anything like this. And most of the time when people get these results back, they notice no difference when they cut these foods out, and they notice no reaction of a lot of the foods that are coming up on those tests. So bogus, throw it away, don't need it, save your money. And I will say also, if at any point, like Christina mentioned, you have ordered a food sensitivity test, of course you did, because you heard that they would help you fix whatever was going on. So we don't fault you for that, right? We have a lot of compassion around that. Like we just said, both of us did them at one point, but I would not advise spending any money on this because it doesn't actually give you any solution or answer of what is actually going on. If you do actually have any food sensitivities or any amount of food sensitivities, just cutting those foods out is not going to fix why you have those in the first place.
And it also doesn't mean that you can't ever have those foods again. That's what's so hard about it, is that people, even if you were to get relief from it, right? It doesn't solve the root of the problem. The food isn't the problem. It's something else that's making it hard for your body to digest and use that food.
Yeah.
So that's like another thing too. It's like, you remove it and then what? Like you're never allowed to have that food again. In a lot of cases, that's not the case if you go into it by looking at what Dana's talking about with all the other things, and that this is like a last resort. Maybe there is an instance where that could happen, but it's so rare. I very rarely ever see that come up. And
Yeah.
to tell you guys too, before we waste any more time on Everlywell, food sensitivity testing
Or food sensitivity testing in general.
Anywhere. But when I got mine done, mine lit up like a Christmas tree with all kinds of foods that I was sensitive to. Gluten was not one of them, you guys. And I have celiac disease and was later diagnosed with celiac disease. So to me, it was more of like, what is this gobbledygook? Like this is not right. All it did was say, your body be tripping and things are happening and like you need to figure it out. And I think that's what you can take from it. If you already got one done, we're sorry, guys. It sucks, but you got to do more to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And there's, if you want to understand what this is, what food sensitivity testing is actually testing for and how it involves the immune system and leaky gut and all that other kind of stuff, we have a lot of information on that I will share in the show notes. Maybe I'll even post a bonus episode on Patreon that we did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But yeah, if you want more information, we have plenty of it. We just don't want to spend an entire episode talking about that because we have a lot of other questions to get to. So
yeah. And the next one is stool testing that people brought up a lot, which we actually did an entire episode where Dana walked us through an entire GI map stool testing with a case study and everything. It was really awesome. It's in our Patreon. It was the episode from
last week. One thing I wanted to mention also is that if you are feeling totally overwhelmed by all of these trends and supplements and all these things that you're honestly, once you see one and you click on it, you're going to see 20 more coming up in your feed, right? You are not alone, right? The overwhelming feeling that we have been getting is of overwhelm in our comment section, in our direct messages, in our messages on Patreon. All of those just completely inspired this episode. And we wanted to break a lot of this stuff down because it's like, what's worth your money? What's not worth your money? What's worth just being like, that's bogus and we don't want to do anything about this? Because here's the thing, is like, as we always say, like, we live in a capitalist system, right? Gut health is very trendy right now. And a lot of more people are realizing that they do have gut issues and that is not optimal for them. And so they're looking for solutions for that. What does the market do? You have a problem, we'll sell you the solution. And especially if you're more in the, I would say, functional or food as medicine world, or if you have been there, that field is ripe with gut health, quote, solutions, as you will see as we go through the rest of this episode. So don't feel bad. We got a lot of comments from people that were like, every day it's something new. Please talk about colostrum. I've had way too many people talk to me about this. Like, I've fallen for a lot of this. I need help. This seed nearly took me out. Armra did nothing for me, right? So we have a lot of testimonials from you people. One that somebody did say is like, well, I heard if you take coffee enemas, it will give you GERD, which made me chuckle. But basically, there's a lot of overwhelming feelings about this. And so we just wanted to take the time to kind of break down each one of these as much as possible. And then, like I mentioned before, if we do run out of time, we'll just do another episode. And if you have more things that come up after listening to this episode and you're like, oh, do a deep dive in this, do a deep dive in this, I have a question about this, let us know.
Yeah, we love this stuff. Also, too, I just want to make a note also that it's not surprising to me that we're in this like gut anger peak of life right now in society. Think about all of the things that we are going through. The world is insane right now. The amount of stress, financial stress, life stress, is there going to be a World War III? We don't know. Like, we're living in this like weird limbo of a lot of things. We're coming out of a pandemic where things were so intense. And I think like, there's just so much that to me, it just makes so much sense that we're at this rise of people having GI issues all at the same time. And we live in a society that loves to blame it on our food industry, which, yeah, sure, they might play a part to some degree for a lot of things too. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of environmental things that impact things too. I'm not ignoring that. But I am just saying that that's a piece of the puzzle. And there's a lot of pieces to these puzzles. And so it makes a lot of sense to me that these products are starting to come out because a lot of us are experiencing this collectively and having GI type things and wanting to figure out what's going on. But it makes sense to think about what's going on in my life, what's going on in the world around me that might be impacting how my body is hanging out and like what state am I hanging out in on the day-to-day basis that might be impacting the way my body is digesting and assimilating food.
Yeah, there are a lot of things beyond the individual level that are very intensely impacting our health right now. And I think especially in the functional community, we like to think that everything is controllable. And a lot of people tend to blame everything on food or what you're doing or not doing. And so these products are kind of a natural next step of like, oh, well, even if everything else is out of control, here's one thing you can do. Just take this weird fulvic acid drink and it'll fix everything. And it's like, wait, what? Okay. Can we take a step back there? But speaking of drinks. Yeah. Let's talk about hydrogen water. So this is a really funny behind the scenes moment because Christina brought this to my attention from someone who messaged her. And I was like, you mean regular water? Because every molecule of water has two hydrogen molecules in it? Like, yeah. What?
That was Dana's first response with, all water has hydrogen?
Yeah, I'm a little confused. Like, you can't have water without two hydrogen molecules. So what's happening here? But yeah, this is a new one for me that I had not heard of until, 15 minutes ago before we started recording.
We squeezed this one in.
Yeah, we squeezed this one in. So I have not done extensive research on this, obviously, because we just heard about it. But here's the thing, is we looked it up on PubMed because we got to go to the research, right? And so we found a systematic review that's called Hydrogen Water, Extra Healthy or a Hoax. And this is from January 2024. So it's very recent. This reviewed 25 articles, and they were reviewed by two blinded investigators, right? So what this is looking at is like, what is the research or articles that are out there, assessing the quality and quantity of the research and seeing if the claims that are being made can actually be backed up.
So what are the claims? Let's
Yeah.
go through the claims real quick, and then we'll talk about what was their conclusion.
Yeah. So it says, let's see, potential benefits of hydrogen-rich water can be impacting various aspects of health, including exercise capacity, physical endurance, liver function, cardiovascular disease, mental health, the COVID-19.
Oh, really? They really hit a lot. This is magic water.
Oh, I'm not even done yet. Oxidative stress, anti-aging research, and are a subject of growing interest in ongoing research.
Amazon Prime, deliver today. If it really could do all those things, why wouldn't I just drink this little magic hydrogen water that's sprinkled in with unicorn juice? I mean, come on.
Yes. Yes. So basically what they found, and I will include this link in the show notes for everyone because it goes over like an introduction of what hydrogen water is, what the claims, and then it goes over materials and methods and blah, 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 and all these things. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom and you read the conclusions, what they have said is like these potential benefits and consequences have aroused a lot of debate in scientific and medical industries being the key word there, right? And they say that there is like great potential in understanding the benefits of hydrogen water, but the key phrase here is like, we still have to overcome existing limitations. Basically, what they're saying is they need better designed studies, which infers that the previous studies were not sound, let's say. We need studies in humans to see if this actually works on people. The previous studies were very small sample sizes, and so you can't really draw conclusions from that. And the previous studies were very short-term trials, which you also cannot draw conclusions for. So with a lot of these things, and this is also what we talked about with colostrum last time and a lot of other stuff, is like the preliminary suggested findings are very promising. And that's not to say with a lot of extensive research that these things, will have absolutely no benefit, right? Like they could, but a lot more research needs to be done before we can draw any kind of conclusions and before all of the products that are already out there are actually validated by science. So for now, don't bother. Your regular water has hydrogen in it.
It does have hydrogen in it. And if you want to add some antioxidant boosting to it, maybe eat some berries with the water. And then there you go. They come together.
There you go. Yeah. So that's hydrogen water. Now, we may start hearing about this more, right? Listen, I think this is pretty early and they have a systematic review. So clearly people are talking about it, but we'll see. So maybe we'll be talking about it again in the future on the podcast.
And who knows? Maybe I'll say I've bought it and I feel amazing. And who knows? I'm not, but I'm just saying maybe that people have had it. Maybe there's more research and we start to learn like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool.
If somebody gave it to me for free, I would try it and see if I liked it. Am I going to go out of my way and buy it because it's probably extra expensive? No.
I also wonder if it tastes any different from regular water. What do those extra hydrogens taste like?
I don't know. We're definitely going to be talking about more hydrogen later with some breath testing, but let's go into seed probiotic.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience with this?
None.
Okay.
None. But I know that you've had people reach out and saying that it like took them out. It was really bad. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah. So clinically, I have mixed results from this. I have some people who have come to me taking seed and they're like, it really regularized my bowel movements. Like it helped me a lot. And then I have other people who are like, this destroyed me from the insides. And I never want to experience that again. So one important thing to note about seed, which is this probiotic in particular, is it's actually a symbiotic, which means a mixture of probiotics and prebiotics. So probiotics are those beneficial bacteria that we are adding to our system in the hopes of basically creating a little bit of a traveling circus effect of like, they're not all going to plant roots, but some of them will stay and help kind of grow the garden, versus the prebiotics are actually the food for the bacteria that you have. These are mostly fibers and that are going to encourage those bacteria to grow. So it's not surprising that people have mixed results on this because some people do need a combination of probiotic and prebiotic given their unique circumstances. And for other people, that would be awful. Like
I was going to say, if you're taking a prebiotic and you're feeding a bacteria that's already
overgrown,
overgrown and wreaking havoc, you'd have even more symptoms.
Yeah. Or if you do something like a GI map or other kind of stool test and you show that you have very, very low levels of beneficial bacteria, this is probably too much too fast. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the claim that Seed makes is that this combination of probiotics and prebiotics create postbiotics, which like all bacteria create postbiotics. But basically what that means is the beneficial end products of bacteria that produce things like butyrate, short-term fatty acids, anti-inflammatories, blah, 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 all the good stuff. We want all of that. If you have more questions about postbiotics, prebiotics, symbiotics, blah, 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 I will also put 2 studies in there. One is a review, and then one is also talking about IBD, so Crohn's and colitis. With Seed in particular, one issue is this is a subscription-based probiotic, and you can only get it based on a subscription that's like $50 a month. And it's like, well, that's a lot to invest if I don't even know if this is going to work for me. The other thing that I don't like about it is it says that it contains a whole bunch of different strains of probiotics, but it doesn't tell you how much of each one of those. So there's no way to know, because there is new and emerging research about individual strains of bacteria that show that different bacteria may have different benefits on gut health, immune health, mental health, blah, 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 all the things. But if you're looking for a specific benefit, whether it's gut, mental health, and it's so individual, it's like this strain is very helpful for antibiotic-associated diarrhea or C. diff post-infectious diarrhea, or this one is helpful for constipation, or this is helpful for IBD, or this is helpful for anxiety, or, it's all very, very individualized. And at the same time, there is barely any to no research that supports, oh yes, if you take this individual probiotic, it's going to give you this immediate benefit of your mental health. There are very, very few probiotics for which there is research that supports that. But again, if I'm looking for, or if as your clinician, I'm trying to figure out, okay, you have XYZ, here are the probiotics that we have seen and are shown in studies to be beneficial to that, I'm not giving you something that doesn't have any measurement of how much is in there.
Because then how do you know if it's a therapeutic amount?
Yes, exactly. Well, yeah. So that is kind of a big thing with Seed. I will say it's very millennial branded. It's very minimalistic. It's like a subscription.
Oh, I bet I would love it. I bet I would love the branding. It would be so easy. I get so influenced, you guys. Like, it's so easy. I'm like, ooh, you pretty. And
like, to be honest, it looks exactly like athletic greens, which neither of us liked. So
we hated, and they sent that to us for free, and I hated it. Casey literally spit it out on the street. He was so excited to get it because he's like, oh, this will be great. Like, I can have it on my way to the gym or whatever. And he goes, I spit it out. It was so bad.
Yeah. But so the conclusion that I would make for Seed is like, yeah, it may work for some people. And for a lot of people, it's probably not going to work. And if you want to take a probiotic, then I would recommend taking a more targeted one because one, there's a lot of different strains in here. For some people, let's put it this way. If this works for you, that's really lucky because you kind of hit the nail on the head randomly, right? You hit the right whack-a-mole. But if it doesn't work for you, that's entirely not surprising because there's so many different strains in here. There's literally unknown amounts. I mean, Seed clearly knows. Maybe they don't, but they are having some ongoing clinical trials on their website, but they have not published results and they started in 2020. So it's like, are they just saying that they have ongoing clinical trials?
Where are they?
I don't really know. Yes, exactly. Where are the receipts?
Because at this point, 4 years would be a really long study, right? Like you would think they would do a more short-term study, like 6 months to a year of taking it and then do a stool test and then see what's going on. Like that would be
or even just clear, like a symptom assessment or anything. Yeah. And the article that I'm reading with this review is from January 2024. So this is updated. But yeah, so this is definitely not, I mean, with none of these things, right? This is definitely not something that I would say like, oh yeah, everybody should go out and buy this. Like if you have tried this and it's been helpful for you in regulating bowel movements or anything like that, awesome. I still would not recommend it across the board.
So, but if someone's already taking it and they like it, you don't think that there's any harms to taking it?
No, not necessarily. You know, it's like,
I mean, you do you. Pay your
Yeah.
$50 for your cute bottle of probiotics, and if it feels good.
yeah, I mean, I definitely think you could get a better bang for your buck, but if it's working for you, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, cool.
speaking of probiotics,
Are we going to go into Pendulum Life?
I'll go into Pendulum a little bit. So Pendulum is a new and emerging probiotic originally / gut supplement company that does actually have a lot of research behind it. They have done different webinars with GI Map, which is the stool test that we talked about last week. And I have watched some of their research videos and other stuff. Like, I have still yet to do like a super deep dive on them, but they have 3 main products. The one that has very much popularized them in the very niche gut world that has not yet been trickled down to social media is called Akkermansia. This is actually one of the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria that we test on the stool testing that we talked about last week. But the preliminary research shows that, like, if you have very low levels of that bacteria and you take a very high dose of that specific probiotic, it can help raise that bacteria, which is very protective for the intestinal lining and blah, blah, blah. But the effects only last as long as you take the probiotic, which is kind of expected. I mean, that's kind of how probiotics work, but it's kind of like, okay, well, if I'm only going to get these results for as long as I take this. But this probiotic, when it first came to market, was literally $99. I think it actually went up to $109. It's now down to like $59, $69 if you do it with a subscription. And I'm not saying it doesn't work. There are a lot of customer feedback that show that it works. I have not used this with any of my clients, but there is research behind it. There's a lot of research behind Akkermansia. At the same time, and unless we're in like a very, very kind of pigeonholed situation and nothing else is working, I don't think I'm going to use this. So, yeah, we're going to do a deep dive on
Are there other brands that make
Nope.
Akkermansia, or no? This is the only. This is
the first. Yeah, I'm sure since they have been seeing a lot of benefits in new actual clinical trials that they do, unlike seed, that are available.
Seed.
Yeah, there are known benefits. And you know what? That's not just shade on seed. There are so many other probiotic companies that don't even try to have clinical trials. So there's that too. But Pendulum first kind of became known and widely known for Akkermansia because it was literally the only Akkermansia product on the market. And this is the part where we'll probably do more of a deep dive is Pendulum has just recently released what they're calling a GLP-1 probiotic, which has the Akkermansia and then it has butyrate-producing species in it, which they claim naturally boosts GLP-1 production.
Everyone, raise your eyebrows and also potentially roll your eyes all at the same time. I can see how that will be what makes their name known in households everywhere.
Yes.
Like, it's going to be hitting everybody. You're going to be targeted for it. Watch out. It's coming. They're all coming.
Yes. And this next kind of sentence is why we want to do a big deep dive on this, is because these claims that they are saying are little asterisk, read the fine print at the bottom of their website says, based on preclinical studies. Also, the other claims that they make on the website that are like, this was beneficial for 91% of people and blah, blah, blah. That is not based on studies. That is based on consumer feedback, which you don't know if that consumer feedback was like sponsored by influencers or like they were sent the product for free or if it was actual people. Either way.
Or even also too, you don't know what other things are doing at the same time. Is someone having symptom relief and having these benefits, but they're also at the same time taking Ozempic? Or we don't know the other factors that are at play that are, because you can't control, it's not a controlled study. It's just feedback. And these people are buying the product. So either they're going to like it or they're not going to like it, or they're paid to like it.
Right. And that's that is the piece of marketing and that I really don't like about the website, because it is in huge fonts everywhere. 91% of people experience reduced sugar cravings and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, this is not based on studies. This is just consumer feedback of 274 people or something, which is not like a super small number, but it's also like, this product is so new that we cannot back up these claims yet. And so we're going to do a deep dive on this. I'm deciding it right now on air. Fuck it, we're doing it live. We're not doing it right now, but we'll do it later.
We'll do it later, but we're going to do a deep dive. Also, it makes you think like the investor part of me is kind of like, ooh, should I buy stock in Pendulum for the
Is that
GLP-1
unethical
probiotics?
as dietitians? Probably.
Probably unethical, but, they're doing a lot of stuff that's not cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that is something that went through my mind.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Because, everyone's going to start selling GLP-1 probiotics now. Like that's going to, once that is, if there's anything that gives an inkling that it's actually quote unquote working, that they can go to and start making, they're going to. Let's also remember too, guys, that these are not
Tested by the FDA.
approved. Yeah, they're not FDA approved. No one has to check how much they're putting into anything. All they can do is maybe make a claim, or there can be any study anywhere by anyone that says some strand that they're putting in theirs, and maybe even it's like a little micro, whatever, the smallest amount possible that they're putting in their thing, and then they get to put it on their advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's just remember that as we go through and find all these things.
Yeah. Let's take a step back. And like you mentioned, as soon as the studies come out, people are going to start jumping on making these products. No, I guarantee you they're already making these products. They're not going to wait for FDA approval. No supplement company ever does, as far as I know.
Definitely not. What I mean is that now people are going to start jumping on the whole idea of GLP-1 probiotics. Mm-hmm. And if there's someone already doing it, everyone else, you're going to start seeing this for every single brand.
Yeah. And then it's going to be like the natural Ozempic. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll
Save
definitely
your money. It's so much cheaper than Ozempic. No GI issues. Oh my gosh. I can just see it all now. Oh God.
Yeah. So if this starts to come up in a couple of months to a year, you've been warned. And you know what?
We are estimating that this is what's going to happen.
Here's the thing, is just like we talked about before, they may find in more clinical trials and studies and stuff that maybe some probiotic out there does act like a natural GLP-1, like it will increase the output of GLP-1, but then I'm sure we'll start to find things of like, oh, well, too much GLP-1 is actually a bad thing, or, we'll see. So,
but what's interesting too? It's like, so if you are someone with type 2 diabetes and you are looking for ways to manage and support your insulin production, maybe something like this could be really great for you, right? We don't know, right? There's not enough research to substantiate that, right? So I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that there could be the potential for that. But what gets me kind of like jazzed up is that we're seeing it turn into, or I'm predicting that it's going to turn into the next thing to have. And it's going to be based off of claims that it's not applicable to everyone. And we always talk about our prerequisites for things. And is this applicable to me? Probably not. But if you have type 2 diabetes and it's turned out to be something that is actually supportive, then maybe it is applicable to you. Something to think about.
Yeah. So we'll see. The jury's out. But right now, don't waste your money.
Not yet.
Specifically on the GLP-1 product. I do see some benefit in the Akkermansia and in the butyrate product, but we'll go into those more whenever we decide to do the deep dive. Speaking of things that have very pseudoscience behind them, I think I'm going to, we're not going to talk as much about Armra because we already really went into the colostrum situation on the previous episode, which I will definitely link in the show notes. If you have additional questions on colostrum, definitely, message us on Instagram, message us on Patreon, shoot us an email, whatever you want to do. I want to go into food marble.
Dun, dun, dun.
I had never heard of this before someone asked a question a couple of weeks ago. This is what they call innovative digestive breath testing.
AKA home testing for SIBO.
AKA pseudoscience. So here's the thing. There are Food Marble itself. There are two different at-home devices that you can get. One tests for hydrogen, one tests for hydrogen and methane. Obviously, the hydrogen and methane one is going to be more expensive. The hydrogen one only is $80, and the hydrogen plus methane one is $250. There's a lot of faulty science behind breath testing in general, including SIBO tests that you can get from Genova, which I have used before. Not the faulty one. but I have interpreted a lot of SIBO breath testing when people come to me already having gotten it. Most of the time when people come to me for issues with SIBO, they have had a breath test through a doctor, they have done at least one round of antibiotics, and they feel like symptoms are still coming back. So you can see the appeal of something like Food Marble because SIBO breath testing is expensive. It's typically between $175 and $300, depending on the markup that your clinician puts on it. And if you feel like there's a potential that you're going to get more than one SIBO breath test, this would be very alluring because it's like, well, it's only $250. And if I'm going to be spending $500 or more on 2 or more tests, then I might as well save money and do this. No. Here's the thing is there's a lot of faults with this at-home testing. And I'm not even saying that the scientific measurement of rising levels of hydrogen and methane is inaccurate on the at-home test. That's actually not the part that I have issues with. It's, let's say you do this, right? And you get a rise in hydrogen and methane. Now what? Now what do? You don't have the ability to go for another antibiotic. Is an antibiotic even necessary? I don't know. You don't have a practitioner working with you. And the other thing is, you can have low readings of hydrogen and methane gas and heavy symptoms. You can also have high readings of hydrogen and methane gas and no symptoms. And another big issue of at-home breath testing like this is there are very little control variables. If we look at the way that food moves through your system, you can get food from your mouth to your intestines in 10 minutes. You can get it there in 3 hours. And every single person is going to have a different transit time. And so unless you actually know your transit time because you have had one of those like ionic isotopes, like you eat it and then they like watch it as it goes down your digestive system.
I had that done.
Which that will also change over time, right? So like unless you got it yesterday, there's no way to know what your unique transit time is. I mean, we could say if you tend to be more constipated, you probably have a slower transit time. If you have a faster transit time, then you probably have more diarrhea. Not always though. And with Food Marble, I do think it's a waste of your money because even if you are measuring these different rises in testing in hydrogen and methane, what are you going to do about it? You know, the number one thing I would not recommend, which probably a lot of people doing Food Marble are doing, is they're testing this and then they're going out to Reddit or whatever and being like, what is the protocol for SIBO? And then they're doing like an herbal protocol on their own, which is obviously not going to be supervised by a clinician 90 to 99% of the time. And it's just, yeah, I think it's causing a lot more problems than it's worth. Not even yet going into the relationship with food and food restrictions piece. Because if you, let's say you eat breakfast and then you test something and it's like, whoa, raise in hydrogen and raise in methane. And you notice, or maybe you don't, that there is a correlation between a rise in the gases and your symptoms. You might be like, whoop, can't eat those foods. Those are out. Add them to the bucket of I can't eat these foods. Let's say you then again test after lunch. Same thing happens. Whoop, go in the bucket of I can't eat those foods. You're basically just adding on to the number of things that you, quote, cannot eat because they're causing rises in hydrogen and methane. This isn't even going into the, like, is this actually accurate? I don't know. I've never tried it, right? So, like, and there would be no way to actually test it unless you did this breath test and you did another breath test. And like we mentioned before, there's a lot of errors in breath testing. In SIBO testing, you get a lot of false negatives, you get a lot of false positives. And the other thing, too, is, like, you don't have, like, a completely clear GI system most of the time when you're doing this breath test, unless you're doing one of the ones that you order through your doctor, right? Generally, you have to do a kind of prep diet, which means it's like a very low fermentable, very low residue diet so that the bacteria that you do have in the intestines are kind of sleeping, right? And then when you eat the challenge foods or the solution, which it's funny that they call it a solution because it actually causes a lot of problems for people. But when you take the thing, right, that's going to provoke this breath result, most people feel pretty awful. But you then can measure what is the difference between the low residue, low fermentation diet that I was doing and this kind of challenge food or challenge solution, right? That doesn't happen when you're testing at home. You don't have a control variable. So when you're testing at lunch, that could be from the food you ate yesterday. That could be from the food you ate this morning. It could be from the food you ate at lunch. It really depends on your transit time. It depends on if you have leftover stool in the colon, which sounds gross, but that's what constipation is, right? And so there's just so many issues with this, again, before we even get to the fear around food and relationship with food and how stress can affect your gut presentation and everything like that. It's really not worth your money. I would actually highly advise against doing something like this because similar to the food sensitivity testing, you're getting data, but you don't know why you're having that data, and you don't have any solution to what to do with that data, and you don't have a practitioner to walk you through this. Now, it may be different if you brought this data to a practitioner, but it might not, depending on the person you go to.
And to be honest, if you brought this to your GI doctor with high results and you wanted to get antibiotics done, they're going to schedule you for their own SIBO testing. They're not going to use this as factual data to prescribe you with a medication. They're not going to do it. So not only are you out $250 with no solutions, or to do your own solutions, which we've already covered is a terrible idea. Yeah. Now you're going back to your doctor. Your doctor's probably like, why are you wasting your money on this? And now we have to do another one that you have to schedule and do more time to do all those things as well before they even entertain the idea of you scheduling before giving you a prescription for it. So I feel like too, because also with SIBO, like we've talked about before, depending on what type you have to get different types of, there's different reasons and thoughts behind each one. So it's highly personalized. So to go and take this at home and then be left holding the bag, like, okay, great, I have this, even if the data were accurate, you have no means to do anything productive with that data. Mm-hmm. It's not quite the same as like we've talked about Paloma Health before, where it's like you do the thyroid testing. And if you do have, you actually get to meet with a doctor. So there is like, if something is out of range, you meet with a doctor, a physician, and not one of like, and you walk through different types of things that you can do in the support way. This doesn't have that. Not that I've understood. So to me, you're left holding the bag with this data and saying, okay, now I've confirmed that I have it. Now what?
Food Marble is like a DIY SIBO. It's not treatment. It's testing. And, there's human error as well when you're doing this on your own. So anyway, this is one of those that no recommendation, no caveat of like, oh, well, if you have this, no, just don't.
I will say this, not for people to recommend doing it, but I understand the desire to, because I have 100%. A couple clients who are potentially have SIBO, and they've been waiting months and months and months to get in with a doctor and feeling terrible. So I could see how in a panic of distress, and you're feeling like, I can't get in with anyone. I can't even do anything. I don't know how long to wait. You get an ad for this. And the next thing you know, you're like purchasing it late at night when you're panicking. Like, I totally get it. And we find no fault to you. Yeah. This is why they target this way. This is how they do it. And it sucks,
is why we're doing this episode.
And now you have this data and you don't have anything to do with it. Mm-hmm. And that sucks.
Yep. Yeah. So
even if it's positive, like you don't know what to do with it from there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Do not recommend.
Do we have time to go into the last one, or do we want to hold off and do that in another episode?
Yeah, I think we'll talk about ion in another episode, because I'm sure we're going to get some follow-up questions to this as well. Who knows? Maybe we'll have more information on hydrogen water by next time. Probably not.
Ooh, probably not, yeah.
Because that only came out at the end of January, and it's only March when we're recording this, so probably not. But we'll see. But yeah, we would love to see, what are the other things that you all have been seeing. I've been seeing a couple more things that I can bring up next time that I'm just like, oh, dear universe, please stop.
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. But so, like we mentioned before, things that will be in the show notes. If you're interested in learning more about what's the deal with stool testing, who even would we recommend getting it, which is not everybody, what can it be used for, how likely is it that'll be covered by insurance, and then actually walking through like a case study of what that can look like. that is linked on our Patreon, and we'll put it on the show notes. I'll also include more information on the food sensitivity testing in terms of the information around food sensitivity testing if you are interested. And I think that's all that we had mentioned to put in the show notes.
Yeah, I think that's everything.
Oh, also April is IBS Awareness Month, which is why we wanted to do this the first week of April.
Woohoo! Everyone with IBS, shake your hands.
Woo! We're all so happy to be here.
Me.
Yeah, so
lucky me, guys.
if you are interested in more episodes that we've done about IBS and IBD and the gut-brain connection, I'll put those in the show notes as well. Have a good day. Hey friends, it's Dana, and thanks so much for listening to the Wholehearted Eating Podcast today. Find us on social media at Wholehearted Eating Pod on Instagram and at wholeheartedeating.com for more information about working with Dana and Christina for one-on-one nutrition counseling. If you love the show, we would love you forever if you share an episode with your family and friends, or tag us on social media, or leave a 5-star rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts to help more people find the show. Check out patreon.com/wholeheartedeating to help support the show and get access to ad-free episodes, bonus episodes with us and our guests, episode discussions, new resources we're creating for Patreon, and so much more. If you have questions for us, feedback on the show, potential topics or guests you'd love to have on, shoot us an email at hello@wholeheartedeating.com, and we'll see you next week.